Hey everybody, how we doing? You doing okay? I don't know if you guys can hear the lawn guy, but not much I can do about it now. I will be right back. All right. Yes, Yolanda, you can. Kennedy, of course. What is going on? Yeah, they're shouting.
How do you pronounce your name, man?
Dr. Sawatsky?
Shawalski? Okay. Are we still meeting today?
In my office hour? Yes, we can.
Okay.
Hello, hello, hello. We'll wait a couple of minutes. While we wait to see if other people show up, let me put up the to-do for you guys, okay? So you can put that in your journals. Actually, oh, I don't have one for today, so never mind. So we'll just wait for a couple minutes. I thought I had one, but I did not include it.
Can I do
That's
something real fast? I need to plug on my computer, but like I need to find a charger.
go grab one. Yep,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome. All right, got some people coming in. Wait one more minute and then we need to get started. So hopefully we will pick up a few more people. Yeah, we've got some people who normally are here that aren't here yet. So. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Hopefully we'll pick up a few more people as things go on, okay? So today we're going to talk about ancient Roman theater. So it's a completely different sort of subject. There's lots and lots and lots of differences between ancient Roman theater and ancient Greek theater. And so that's really what we're going to look at today. Okay. So where'd my share thing go? There we go. Okay. Here we go. So today we're going to talk about some things about ancient Greek theater, like I mentioned, different than, or Roman theater, different than ancient Greek, okay? So for those of you, let's turn on our video really quick so that I can see you, so that I know you're here, and then if you need to turn it off for me to hear you better or for you to hear me better, we will do that. But just so that I can see all of your lovely faces for a moment, we'll turn those cameras on. But I know that some of you with just the bandwidth isn't in your favor. Thank you guys, I appreciate it. So yeah, we're gonna talk about ancient Roman theater and we're gonna talk about how maybe there was actual real murder on stage. Who knows? Okay, so we had some more options for entertainment in Rome. Remember how we talked about with ancient Greek tragedy in particular? It wasn't just entertainment, right? What else was it to the Romans? What else did they use tragedy for in particular? You can put it in the chat or you can come off mute and tell me. What did they do with the festivals? Anybody remember? Yes, you can turn your cameras off to hear better if that helps you. If I sound like a robot, turn your camera off so that maybe I'm not such a robot for you. But I'm still going to call on you to participate, remember, right? Anybody remember what they would do for the festivals? What about with the playwrights? What did they do with the playwrights? They use masks. Yes, you're right. Absolutely. Yeah, they did use masks. That's correct. And we're still going to have masks in ancient Roman theater, right? But remember how we talked about it was considered their sort of like civic duty and they had the voting, right? And they would vote for what play was the best. Do you guys remember that? Give me a thumbs up either with the Zoom feature or put it in chat. I see Jennifer remembers. You guys remember how we talked about, yeah, there were contests. I'm getting a lot of private messages. There were contests, right? And they would vote on what they thought was the best play. And remember, the playwright got rewarded. There was like the pictures of like the feast, right? And everything, okay? So that's not really the case now in ancient Rome. We're really more talking about entertainment, all right? So they have a couple other options for entertainment. The first one's the Circus Maximus, and the second is the Colosseum. Have you guys ever heard of either of those? A lot of people usually have heard of the Colosseum and what they did there for entertainment. A couple people are saying no, seeing some shaking, some heads being. Okay, Edziri, what was, do you remember what happened in the Colosseum?
No, I don't remember. I remember that.
Okay, yeah, they would have like, there would be battles, right? They would have gladiator fights. They would sometimes have historical, like reenactments of historical battles, right? Sometimes they would have like, I mean, and I know it's kind of gruesome, but they would have like a thing where you would have like, they'd put a bunch of like Christians and arm them and be like, all right, well, you're going to fight a bear and see what happened, right? And the other thing is the Circus Maximus. And so I'm going to show you a little clip. It's like a 3-minute clip about the Circus Maximus so you can see what happened there because it's pretty interesting. So here we go. Oh, wait, let me make sure. Go back because I don't think I turned my, sorry, I don't think I turned my computer sound on. Yep, I did. Okay. Go back. Ooh. There we go. Okay.
The Circus Maximus is a valley located between two hills, the Palatine Hill and the Aventine Hill. And Roman tradition takes its use back all the way to the time of Romulus. It is here that he has a plot to basically increase the population of his early city of Rome. He invites people from neighboring villages, and at the time of a religious festival, he tells his other fellow Romans, go out and grab a girl. And this is the famous rape of the Sabine women, and this is how Rome gets its start. In the regal period, it's the Tarquin kings that are credited with using that space, that big open valley, for horse racing, chariot racing. And over time, people go from sitting on the slopes of the hills to sitting in wooden bleachers that over time become made into stone. And by the time we get to the reign of Trajan, the Circus Maximus is the greatest venue of all time. It holds up to 200,000 spectators. And there was
So 200,000 people could watch these like chariot races, basically, okay? Which I looked it up last time. That's like twice the size of some of the biggest stadiums that we have now. Oh, doesn't want to play nice with me today. There we go.
To the reign of Trajan, the Circus Maximus is the greatest venue of all time. It holds up to 200,000 spectators, and there was nothing like it. The dimensions of the Circus Maximus in the imperial period is staggering. The starting blocks are located over toward the Forum Boarium, and the chariot racing would take place usually 7 laps going around this track. How long was the Circus Maximus? 545 meters long and about 80 meters wide. So it was a massive construction. And in the center, you race around the Spina. It was filled with temples and shrines, and ultimately there are 2 enormous obelisks. The Emperor Augustus brings the first one with the conquest of Egypt. It is now in the Piazza del Popolo. Constantius II brings the last obelisk from Egypt into the city of Rome. This is in 357 and is now in front of St. John Lateran. Famously, it's here that you have the Fire of 64, the great fire of Nero that destroys 3/4 of the city breaking out. How did this take place? Well, we're told it's a very hot, dry summer. And of course, what you have near the stands, you have the stalls, you have the paddocks, you have the places where the animals are stored, you have lots of straw. And that's a great place for a fire to break out. And of course, from there.
So yeah, so here's a map of the fire, right? So we see, here's the Circus Maximus, right? So the fire started here in the stables and it spread all throughout the city of Rome in the year 64. Now they do rebuild, right? But huge fire, right? So that's sort of the idea, right? We have the Colosseum, we have the Circus Maximus, we have these huge venues for these different kinds of entertainment. So drama takes a little bit of a back seat during ancient Rome, right? I mean, they're still doing tragedy and they're still doing comedy, but they're not going to emphasize tragedy like the Athenians did. So when they do theater, you're going to see a lot more comedy than you do tragedy. All right. Any questions about those? You understand, right? There's more variety. That's the big emphasis. Okay. Make sense? Yeah? Tell me in the chat if you're following, you understand. Yes, I'm getting a couple private messages. I see some nods from those of you I can see. All right. Okay, cool. All right. So, like I said, when we do get drama, it's mostly going to be in the form of comedy. And we're going to talk about two different people today that wrote comedy. And the first one we're going to talk about is Plautus. So what was Plautus doing? Well, Plautus primarily writes plays that are what we today would call a farce. Okay, so they're very physical comedies, they're very high paced, and his characters are mostly stock characters, which I'm going to get into a little bit more in a minute. Okay. And primarily, his plays are based on domestic situations and romance. So they're about stuff that's happening mostly to like everyday people. And there's always like a romantic element, a couple that's in love and they want to be together, but they're being kept apart by a few things, right? Now, his plays are going to be based on Greek new comedy. And remember, I mentioned, or I'm sorry, old comedy. And I mentioned that before, that we don't have any of the originals of Greek old comedy. So the stuff that we know about what Greek old comedy was like is from the works of Plautus. Okay? So what does that mean? Well, they're based on Greek new comedies, but he would alter them a little bit, right? He'd take the original and then add some Roman allusions, make Latin dialogue, play with the meter a little bit, and add some jokes, you know, that would appeal to Roman audiences. So he kind of plagiarizes, you know, like 70% of it's plagiarized, and then the rest he's like added a few Roman tricks and, you know, tips in there. We have 20 of Plautus's plays, so we have quite a few considering how old they are, right? He used a lot of slapstick. Does anybody know what slapstick is? Or your best guess at what it's like? There's some pretty popular examples of it in like a stick to slap someone with. Well, it does. Slap is a clue. Yeah. Anybody else? Has anybody ever heard of the Three Stooges? No? Yes, says Maya. Okay, so it's very physicalized comedy, right? So the Three Stooges, they do a lot of like pretending to poke each other's eyes out and they like hit people in the faces with pies. Now, we didn't really have like hitting people in the faces with pies in Roman comedy, but it was like physicalized humor, right? Think of like some of the stuff that you see in Looney Tunes, you know, like this crazy stuff like happens to a character, but there's no real like concern that they're actually hurt, right? They are, you know, they continue, they're back in the next scene, like everything's fine, right? Like the coyote, right? And Wile Coyote, he can have like an anvil fall on his head, and then, you know, 2 seconds later, he's like back plotting again, right? Okay. So we're sort of talking about this really fast physical humor, okay? The other thing that's really important about Plautus's comedies is that mostly they're sung. So we don't really have a lot of dialogue that's spoken. It's mostly music that he tells the stories through. Okay? Any questions about that? I can see Jennifer shaking her head. Those of you I can't see because I know your connections aren't great. Clarissa's given me a thumbs up or a wiggle. Everybody else doing good? I'm seeing some yeses in the chat privately. Okay, all right. I see some thumbs up. Yeah, the thumbs up feature in Zoom, that works too. Thank you, Avril. Okay, great. So, stock characters. Remember I said I was going to explain those more. So, stock characters are called that because they're very broad characters and they don't have a lot of depth, right? So, when we look at later, we're going to look at Commedia. They may have influenced Commedia dell'arte. Now, with Commedia, they're actually going to do where they have, like, each character has a specific mask. So you know what character it is based on what mask they're wearing. But we're talking about characters like, you know, the young lovers, right? So like a young man who's in love, a young woman who's in love, maybe like the smart servant would be one, the fool would be one, a like grumpy old man, right? And they're kind of the same character in every play. So actors, professional actors during this time would kind of get typecast in a way and playing the same character over and over again in different plays, right? So again, you can kind of see this sometimes in like cartoons, right? Like Looney Tunes, a lot of the characters, they're never really any different, right? They don't grow and develop really over time. They're always kind of like, they want the same thing, okay? And so they're called stock characters in a way because you can kind of like shop and you know, say like, okay, for this play, I need a young male lover and a young female lover and a grumpy old man and a witty servant. And that's going to be, you know, my play. Everybody get stock characters? Does this make sense? You've seen it probably in, like I said, cartoons before, right? Sometimes like Disney characters or some Disney movies have some stock characters, right? There's always like a bad guy, or there's always something that's standing in the way of the young man and woman getting together. Okay, great. So the next person we're going to talk about is Terence, all right? So we had Plautus, and now we have Terence, and he has a totally different approach to comedy than Plautus did. So the first thing is that his comedies are going to be more literary, and they're not going to be that exaggerated physical humor that we dealt with before, right? So they're more about wit and verbal humor, okay? So we're more into the sort of satire dialogue of things, okay? And that's the thing about the dialogue, is that it's meant to be spoken, not sung. So big difference, right? We had Plautus with exaggerated and sung, and we have Terence with literary humor and spoken dialogue. Again, I want to remind you, though, that both of these people are still using masks, right? And they're both still using mostly all male companies of actors, okay? So that hasn't changed. Okay, a little bit more information on Terence. He was actually born in Carthage, so he may have been sort of our first playwright of color that we've really dealt with. He came to Rome actually as a slave when he was a boy, and he became a slave of a senator who had him educated and then ultimately freed him, okay? He died pretty young, and so as a result, we only have 6 of his plays, all right? So big difference from Plautus. The other thing about Terence is that his plots were more complex. So he would take some plays that were sort of original to Greek, right? So again, they're stealing from the Greeks, right? And used Greek characters, but then he would mix it up a little bit, right? So he would manipulate it and make the plot more complex than it was to begin with. So a pretty interesting guy who had a pretty interesting life. I think in the Crash Course Theater that we're going to watch, you're going to see that he doesn't live very long. He ends up dying at sea. So yeah, born in Carthage, brought to Rome as a boy. He's a slave, then he gets educated, he gets freed, he becomes a famous playwright, and then he dies at an early age. Wild and short life, the life of Terence. Any questions about that? Thumbs up if we're good, or give me a yes. I don't want to leave people behind. Now, of course, the PowerPoint's in Schoology, but okay, I'm getting some yeses. All right. Okay. So, what do you guys think of when you hear mime? What does that make you think of? Tell me in the chat. France, or you can come off mute if you want. What else? Baguette. What does a mime look like? What does it sound like? What do they do? Okay, someone who acts it out instead of talking, invisible rope, people who don't talk, they only move, people who wear black and white. Yeah, exactly. They use their hands. Okay, good. Yeah. So totally different from Roman mime, okay? Roman mime is a lot different, and you're going to be surprised. So Roman mime was spoken, and it actually could feature serious stories or comic stories, all right? It had female actors. So this is, they're not professional actors, but we do have female actors, and we're not using masks. But one of the biggest thing about mime is that mime featured violence, and sometimes it featured sexual content. They also made fun of the church a lot. So once the Christian church is founded, they make fun of the church all the time. And as a result, Christianity, they're not very excited about mime. So once the Christian church really sort of takes over in Rome, that's one of the first things they're going to try to get rid of, right? So a lot different than what we usually think about when we think about mime today, right? Very little in common. So it's kind of funny that they share the same name. Any questions about mime? Okay, all right. So now we talk about Roman tragedy. Now, like I mentioned, was not as often performed as it was in ancient Greece, right? So Seneca right here, that's our first tragedian in Rome. And there's a few big changes he's going to make. The first thing is that he is going to make it so that the chorus is not super important to the plot. Remember how important the chorus was in Oedipus Rex, right? They're like the citizens that are pleading with him to like help them, and he interviews them, right? Seneca's going to make it, they're there, but they don't really do much for the plot. He's also going to show violence on stage. So if you've ever want to see Oedipus for real gouge his eyes out, you could maybe see that with Seneca's plays, okay? And so as a result, when his plays are discovered, it's very influential on people like Shakespeare and writers in the Elizabethan era. So if you look at some of Shakespeare's tragedies, Titus Andronicus, where two people are beheaded and a girl has her tongue and her hands cut off. And Macbeth, we see the severed head of Macbeth, right? A lot of that comes from Seneca, okay? So they were like, oh man, like this guy really knows what he's doing. but it's like, ooh. So yeah, so Seneca is pretty interesting, and kind of yucky. What else about Seneca? Okay, so this is going to come up again in neoclassicism. Seneca's plays are 5 episodes with acts that are in between the acts. We have choral odes. So it's 5 episodes of dialogue and then a song by the chorus in between. His plays feature these elaborate speeches that have a lot of messages about morality. As I mentioned before, the violence is shown on stage, which was very different from ancient Greece, where they could only talk about things that had happened, right? And the characters are really motivated by like one thing, right? Okay, they're dominated by a single passion that consumes them. Now, we actually don't know for sure if Seneca's plays were actually performed, right? Because of some of the stuff that he calls for. It's very likely that he wrote them and people read them, but they were never done. But it's possible, because of all the other stuff that was going on in ancient Greece, that they would just basically like have somebody killed on stage, like a slave or, you know, somebody who had been captured in order to do the play. We just don't know for sure. Any questions about Seneca? I'm getting some no's. Okay. All right. So in ancient Greece, we had Aristotle writing criticism about theater. In ancient Rome, we have Horace. All right. So he's basically going to take what Aristotle wrote and expand on it. So the first thing that Horace says is that tragedy and comedy should be 2 distinct genres, and they shouldn't have stuff that crosses over, right? He also will say that tragedy should deal with royalty, whereas comedy should deal with the common people, because they don't want to encourage people to laugh at and make fun of people of the upper class here, right? So make tragedy about royalty, and common people, we can laugh at the common people, right, for comedy. Horace is also going to say that drama should entertain, but it should also teach a lesson. So there should be some sort of reason why we're watching the play, okay? Whether it's to learn from the mistakes of the characters or to ridicule how ridiculous some of these people are. You know, it sort of depends on the play, but it should teach a lesson. See the differences, right, between Aristotle and Horace? Yeah. So when we get to neoclassicism, you're going to see elements of what Aristotle said and what Horace said and what Seneca did, and it's all going to sort of get merged together in this big ball of rules that's going to dominate like the 17th century. So that's why, you know, it does all build up over time. Okay, so we're going to watch a short little video about this. Some of it's going to repeat what I just said, but you get to see some examples. Let me turn off my video because I've been told that that helps with the bandwidth. And I have my computer sound on, and hopefully Zoom will work, and we will watch. This is Crash Course Theater number 6.
Hey there, I'm Mike Rignetta. This is Crash Course Theater, and today we'll be looking at the surviving literature of Roman drama, because Roman life wasn't all naval battles and naked miming prostitutes and Christians being eaten by lions. Sometimes you had to take a break and go watch a play. Much like Roman deities, the most popular form of Roman drama were comedies that borrow heavily from Greek originals, especially the comedies of Menander, with a little bit of Atellan farce thrown into the mix. These comedies are called fabulae palliatae. They have outdoor, urban settings and are filled with stock characters. The hero of the play is typically a type known as the adulas case, a young man who is in love with the girl next door, the Virgo, whom he can't marry because she's of dubious parentage, or he's in love with a prostitute, the Moratrix. Then there's the Senex, usually the father or the old man, who's either a strict miser or a louche skirt chaser. Other characters are the Servus, the wily slave, the Leno, the pimp, the Miles Gloriosus, the bragging soldier, and the Parasite, a slave character who sponges off of his master. Sometimes wives and maidservants appear too. These stock characters get themselves involved in stock plots, often a couple plots per play. Typical ones involve thwarted lovers, disagreement between parent and child, and mistaken identity, which is way easier to pull off when everyone is wearing masks. Sometimes there's a direct address to the audience too, kind of like a parabasis, and almost always there's a happy ending, at least for the lovers. Comedies with happy endings are Yorick's faves. He is a man of infinite jest, after all. Oh, sorry. Was a man of infinite jest. In the Roman plays, most of the people and settings have Greek names, which is either a hat tip to the original source or a real failure of imagination on the part of these writers. But even though the setting is ostensibly Greek, the situations and jokes about current events and even the street names are definitely Roman, especially in the works of Plautus. Plautus and Terence are the two guys we're going to be talking the most about. Why them? Well, partially because they were the greatest practitioners of Roman comedy, but also because, you guessed it, their plays survived. Titus Macius Plautus was born in 254 BCE in Umbria, a landlocked region with a lot of truffles. Legend has it that he worked as a stagehand in his hometown and then failed as a merchant before moving to Rome to write plays. 130 plays are attributed to him, but take that with a grain of Roman salt. A lot of writers tried to pass their plays off as his. A 1st century BCE scholar determined that 20 plays are definitely his, and get this, all 20 survive. More or less. That's fine. I'll take it. Plautus's plays are rambunctious comedies about middle-class people and their slaves. You could even call them musicals because from the meter they're written in, we know that at least half of each play was sung. He was a big influence on medieval and Renaissance writers. Molière was a fan, and we'll see that Shakespeare borrowed most of the comedy of errors from him. People love Plautus because his plays are energetic and uproarious with puns galore and tip-top alliterations that are tricky to translate. Plautus's works are a lot like real life, with more prostitutes and twins and songs, which is to say, I guess, that they're not like real life at all, but they are a hoot. When he died in 184 BCE, he apparently wrote his own epitaph. After Plautus died, comedy mourns. The stage is deserted, and then laughter, mirth, and jest all wept in company. Okay, now tell us how you really feel about yourself. Yeesh. The other major comic playwright was Publius Terentius Afer, aka Terence, who's possibly the first playwright of color. Terence was born around the late 180s or early 190s BCE in Africa at Carthage, in a spot that's now a Tunisian suburb. He was a slave owned by a Roman senator who educated him and then freed him. He came to Rome to try to break into the theater by surprising a famous poet at his house. The poet was not thrilled, but then Terence began to read his play, and suddenly the poet was totally into it. Don't take too many lessons from this, though. I didn't get this job by showing up on Stan's doorstep with a stack of things to explain. It's not a great plan. Terence wrote 6 plays, which borrowed heavily from Menander. Cicero even called him a pint-sized Menander. After the 6th, he decided that he needed to travel more to write better plays, so at the age of 25, he left Athens and died at sea. His style is more sophisticated than Plautus's. The comedy is a little less rowdy, but the ironies are deeper. The characters are saner, the meter is more regular, and the constructions are sturdier. Fewer plot holes, fewer dirty jokes, some really elegant Latin. And the women aren't treated that badly, so that's nice. These are classier plays, but they're maybe not as funny. And hey, one more difference. In Plautus and Menander, the prologue basically tells you what's going to happen. Terence doesn't do that. He creates suspense. To take a closer look at Roman comedy, we're going to check out one of Plautus's plays, The Menachmi, or The Menachmus Twins, which we selected because Shakespeare borrowed most of it for the Comedy of Errors. The Menachmi begins with a prologue addressed directly to the audience. An actor comes out and tells everyone, hey, listen up. This is Plautus. You love Plautus. Give it up. Give it up for our man Plautus. The prologue tells us that once there was a merchant from Syracuse who had identical twin sons. He took one of those sons to Epidamnus, where the son was kidnapped, and the merchant died of a broken heart. Both boys eventually end up being called Menachmus, which is a little weird, but hey, you do you. For simplicity, we're gonna call them M in the thought bubble. Years after their poorly fated trip, Syracuse M comes to Epidamnus searching for his brother, Epidamnus M. Epidamnus M is infatuated with a prostitute, Erotium, a name that basically means sexy. He keeps giving her all of his wife's stuff, which, understandably, makes his wife mad. Epidamnus M and his parasite servant go to visit Erotium. He gives her one of his wife's dresses and tells her to prepare a feast. And then he goes away. Syracuse M comes in, gets mistaken for Epidamnus M, and gets to eat Erotium's feast. And he's all, this place is rad. But somehow it never occurs to him that maybe he's been mistaken for the identical twin brother he's been searching for 6 years. Yeah, there are some plot holes. After the feast, Erotium gives Syracuse M the dress and tells him to take it to the tailor. Meanwhile, Epidamnus M's wife is like, why do you keep giving all of my dresses to your prostitute? So he tries to get it back from Erotium, and she's like, dude, I just gave it to you. Then his wife sees Syracuse M and mistakes him for her husband. He doesn't recognize her, so she tries to have him arrested for craziness and maybe dress stealing. Just then, Epidamnus M enters, and the two identical brothers see each other, but it still doesn't occur to Syracuse M that this is the brother he's been looking for. Luckily, the smart servant figures it out. The brothers are reunited, and Epidamnus M decides to auction off all of his stuff, including his wife, so he can return with his brother to Syracuse. Thanks, Thought Bubble. So yeah, it's absurd, sexist, heavily reliant on stock characters and stock situations, but still funny. Not all of Roman drama is quite so hilarious, though. Take the work of Seneca the Younger. Please. Haha, just a little comedy for you there. Seneca Jr. is born Lucius Annaeus Seneca in what is modern-day Cordoba, Spain in 4 BCE. That's just a little while after Horace publishes the Ars Poetica, the first major work since Aristotle's Poetics to tell people what plays should be. Seneca's dad was a big deal rhetorician, and when he was young, he was moved to Rome to study Stoic philosophy because there's nothing the kids like more than Stoicism. He came to adulthood during a pretty volatile time in Roman history. Little Seneca, who grew up to be another big deal rhetoric guy, kept running afoul of emperors, which was easy to do because a lot of them were dangerous psychopaths. Caligula almost executed Seneca, then Claudius banished Seneca on the grounds of adultery. Claudius's wife called him back and installed him as a tutor for Nero, who became emperor, and kept Seneca on as a counselor. But then Nero went a little crazy, and even though Seneca was retired, Nero blamed him for taking part in a conspiracy and ordered him to kill himself. So Seneca did. Man, Stoics. Ew. When Seneca wasn't being threatened by emperors, he sometimes wrote plays, which are mostly revisions of classic Greek works, and they're all tragedies. One possible exception is his Apocolocentausis, a satire about the emperor Claudius that no one really likes and which maybe he didn't even write. In general, Roman tragedies based on Greek subjects are known as fabulae crepidatae, and there were lots, 300 years worth, but basically Seneca's are the only ones that survive. Seneca's tragedies are notable because they're the first to favor the 5-act structure that Shakespeare would adopt. They have a different relationship to the divine, with a lot less confidence that the gods are gonna help everything work out, which is to say they're pretty dark. It makes sense when you remember all of the scary, violent emperors who were ruling Rome during Seneca's time. Nero was as merciless and arbitrary as even the most capricious god. And remember all that stuff the Greeks liked to keep off stage? Like, say, really extreme and incredibly gory violence? That's just the kind of thing Seneca wants to show. Because atrocities, especially those perpetrated on the weak by the powerful, were facts of life in his society. And also a regular feature in violent entertainments like gladiator fights. So if you've ever thought, hey, I'd really like to see Oedipus blind himself, and maybe he could actually tear out both of his eyeballs, man, I have got a play for you. But not you. You don't have eyes. Because of scenes like that one, and the fact that Seneca was a high-class kind of person, there's been a lot of debate about whether his plays were actually performed, or whether they were closet dramas meant to be read rather than produced. Certainly some of the scenes, like the cannibal meal in Thyestes, would have required special effects, but let's not put some creepy props or even extreme violence beyond the limits of the Roman stage. Remember, these are the people who thought that a group of dwarves beating a woman with spiked clubs was just normal entertainment. Check us out next time for a survey of ancient Sanskrit theater. And then...
Okay, so what do you guys think? What's your observations? Does it help to sort of see it? The part where he could take his eyeballs out creeped me out. Yeah. Very weird comedy. Yeah. It's definitely not sort of what most of us would be like, ha ha ha, that's amazing, right? The twin story was interesting. Yeah. Yeah. There's I mean, Shakespeare basically adapts that. It's funny though that at the end he's like, oh, I'm gonna go back with my brother. I guess I'll just auction off my wife. Right. I also love in the thought bubble where like she turns into flames, right? When he does that. I like the thought bubble, you know, because you get the basic bones, right? Like we talked about like the initiating event and everything of a play really quickly, and it's animated, kind of cute, you know. What about Seneca? What do you guys think about Seneca or the emperors? It's pretty wild. Yeah. It was a pretty intense time. You know, the emperor, whatever the emperor said had to happen, right? So the emperor, you know, the emperor tells Seneca, like, okay, kill yourself. Seneca's like, all right, well, I guess, you know. Okay, so I'm going to give you a project, and it is a group project. The instructions are in Schoology, all right, under today's. And so you're going to have 3 groups. So there's going to be quite a few people in a group. So you're going to have to divide up who's going to do what, and you can pair together. So a couple of you are going to create an outline of your playwright's life. A couple of you will sort of write out all the plays that they wrote, okay? And maybe just tell us real brief what it's about. And a couple of you will take one play and give us a more in-depth synopsis about the play, okay? Then if you have enough people, maybe one of you, your job can be to assemble all that into a nice looking PowerPoint so that you can present. So that basically we get a little bit more in depth about each of the playwrights, okay? So I have your groups and I'm gonna post them in the chat. And then I'll put you in some breakout rooms for your people. those of you who have people who are not here today, contact them and let them know what you guys want them to do. All right. And I tried to divide it so that we didn't have a group that had a large number of people who haven't been able to come to the Zoom so that they can contribute their part. Okay. And you don't have just like 2 people who have to present the whole thing. So let me put you in your breakout rooms. So here's your list of who's got what. So copy paste that real quick. Okay. And I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to put you in your breakout rooms. So let me do that. Breakout rooms. It's going to be 3 manually. All right. And then I've got to get my list here so that. Sorry if you can hear, I've got the people who do my lawn are here and I forgot to change the time. So I apologize. I'm gonna mute my mic. Oh, sorry. Most of group 1 is here. Group 2 and 3, you've only got about half your group here. Okay. Any questions before we go to our rooms? You've got your lists. And then if you look in Schoology under today, you'll see the typed up assignment. Okay. And I'll be in to check on you and make sure that you understand. Okay. Sound good? Okay. All right. So here goes your rooms. Woo-choo. Hey guys, do you have any questions for me?
Which one did we get again?
Okay, you're group 3. Yep, you're in the right group, Kennedy. Or you should, yeah. You're doing Seneca. So let me give you your whole group. I posted it in the main chat before, right? But here it is again for you. Okay, so you've got a few people missing. So you guys decide, maybe, one of you will say, okay, like Fabian's going to do the timeline. Victoria's going to look at the, like list all his works. and the two of you are going to come together and do the you know, the summary of one of the plays, and then you email the other people and say, hey, this is what you need to do for our group. Okay.
All right.
Okay. All right. Let me know if you have any other questions. Just raise your hand and I will see it. Hey guys, how we doing? You guys have any questions for me?
No.
Okay, we good? All right. If you think of anything, just raise your hand and I'll come in. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Cool. Hey guys, do you guys have any questions for me? I can't. I cannot understand a single word you just said. Can you post it in the chat, please? I would say you can put it together in a Google Doc, but I'd like you to present it maybe in a slightly nicer way. The assignment, if you look under today's folder, it should be there. It's called like Roman Playwright Project, and there's a link to it. So if you go into Schoology, 4B, and then today is the 18th. Click on that. Yeah, Roman Playwright Presentation Project, and that'll give you sort of the outline. But you could work on it in a Google Doc altogether, and then maybe one of you, your job will be to take the information and put it in like Google Slides or PowerPoint or something, or whatever that other one is, Prezi or whatever, however you want to present it. Does that help? Yes, yes, yes. Okay. All right. Great. Wonderful. All right. If you have any questions, you just let me know and I'll come back. Okay. hopefully that was long enough for you guys to sort of at least exchange some contact information or get some idea of what you're going to do. Okay. And like I said, you're going to have a little bit of time the beginning of next class to sort of pretty it up and make sure that you've got everything, all your bases covered. Got to break out one. Room one is. Okay. There we go. Here we go. So yeah, hopefully you guys have got some basic idea of what you're going to do. I just wanted to touch base really quick with everybody to remind you guys that I need your journals tonight if you didn't turn them in already, okay? And I think that's why I didn't have a due now for today, because I didn't want you to have to include it. And if you can do that communication self-assessment for me, if you haven't done it already, and a lot of you did, do that too, okay? So that's all I really need from you. But work on your projects. If you have any problems with the project, shoot me an email. I can't promise I'll get back to you right away over the weekend, but I will get back to you. Any questions, concerns? Glimpses into the future. We good? Everybody feel good about this? Okay, yes, and it is in Schoology, right? It's in, I want you to have the sort of information about the playwright, a little bit of information about all the plays that you can find, and then detailed synopsis about one of the plays of your choosing. And then what you need to turn in your journals and your self-assessment, the communication self-assessment. Okay. If you don't have any questions, you are excused. If you still need some answers, you can stick around. You too. Have a great weekend. Enjoy yourself. Get out in the sunshine. Wear a mask. All right, what questions can I answer? I know Yolanda, you had some questions for me. Victoria, do you have any questions for me?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Go ahead, Yolanda. What's up?
Okay, so I'm not able to turn my work in or just simply look at it, like it wouldn't load for me. So I was wondering if you could help me.
Okay.
Get everything turned in.
Okay. Yes, I can hear you. I am getting a delay, but I can hear you. Okay, so let me look at what you have. Okay, so you're missing a couple exit tickets and the quiz and the mask. I'm gonna put that in chat in case you can't hear me.
So with the assignments, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6
I can't.
that I haven't done.
There you are.
But like they never load.
They never load for you in Schoology?
Yes.
You can't see them at all, or you just don't
It's
have.
like I see the name, but it never loads on the page. So it's like I'm trying to, get it to work because it happens to a lot of my classes. It sometimes load, and then when I'm trying to do it, it kicks me out. So it's like.
Okay. Do you have a Wi-Fi thing from the school? Oh my God, sorry.
A Wi-Fi thing from the school? No. I have
Okay.
the Chromebook, yeah, but a Wi-Fi thing?
Yeah, you might want to, sorry, I hope that you don't hear all that background noise. I'm going to post it in the chat too. You might want to request a hotspot from the school. You're not, are you going back to campus when we go back or no?
Yes, I'm going back to 28. That's why I'm not trying to like do nothing with the computer anymore.
Okay. All right. So when you are back, you need to do the quiz and you need to submit the essay. You can write your essay and email it to me if you want to do that, so that we can get that fixed now.
Okay, what's the essay about?
Okay. The essay is, I'll copy paste you the assignment. Wait, am I crazy? Oh, you don't have an essay. That's just the 10th graders. So it's the mask, which you could also email me. So the mask, you just have to draw a mask of a character like you would in ancient, like they would have used in ancient Greece.
Mm-hmm.
But you can draw that, take a picture of it, and email it to me if you want. And I can update your grade for that.
Okay.
And then once you get back to school, you can do the quiz and your grade will be replaced for that.
Right. So
Okay.
they said progress report will be coming out today, I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure.
so your progress report isn't going to reflect any of that, right? But you can proactively tell your mom, like, here's the problems that I'm having. And once I
Okay.
get back to school, I'm going to do this, and that's going to raise my grade quite a bit because, like, the quiz is worth quite a bit. And then the
Okay.
mask is worth quite a bit too. Okay.
All right. Well, I'm going to do the mask, and then when I get back to school, I'll remind you that I need to take
Okay.
a quiz.
Okay. All right. Works for me.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
You're
That'll be
welcome.
it for today.
Okay. See ya.
Yeah. See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.